You're opening a flop house. You're going to bring drugs to our area. And even if it's a family member or somebody you really care about, because I've had to fire my mother, my father, my wife, and my sister. I was the company owner, and you got to fire people sometimes. And it's hard to get over, but ultimately, they will be happier if they're doing something that they're better at and they're more appreciated in.
Jim, welcome to the World XP podcast. How you doing today?
I'm doing amazing. Glad to be here.
Yeah, good to have you. So why don't you do a quick intro for the people, kind of who you are and what you do and what you're involved in. And then we'll do the question or questions in this case from the last guests, and then we'll just hop right into it.
Fantastic. My name is Jim Boad, and I build and run group homes, and I specifically run sober living recovery homes. And now my big push in life has been I'm actually teaching and helping other people start, grow, and scale their own recovery homes.
Okay, very nice. It's interesting because the last two people also kind of are from that space, and I haven't had anybody from that space on. And then two in a row. So, anyways, their questions are they're completely unrelated. First one is where do you stand on the moon landing? Did we go to the moon or no?
I think we've made it to the moon, but I question if the first one was it.
Yeah, fair enough. I think there's a lot of questions. People they're like, if you go down the deep rabbit hole on the far corners of the internet, you can find all sorts of theories on that. Yeah, I'm kind of similar to you. I'm like, I don't know if that was the one that it really was, but who knows? The second one, less apt to get yourself into trouble. What's your favorite TV series to binge watch?
Oh my goodness. It has been a long time. You know what? I'm going to have to say Storage Wars.
Yeah, that's a good one. That's a good one. There's lots of those that are just out there, like diners, drive-ins, and dives comes to mind for ones that has just been running for forever. That you can just put on and in the background and just have it be there and all sorts of good stuff. Um, Okay, so so you mentioned to me on the phone that you were involved in real estate for some time. How did you get involved in real estate? I guess so when you were in school or like high school, whatever, what were some of the things that you were interested in? Was real estate kind of the thing that you were interested in? Or like talk to me about like high school version of you, what you wanted to do with your life, and then we can kind of go through the journey of how you ended up in this field because I think for a lot of people, myself included, and other people that I know who are in real estate, it's like, oh, I was working a job and I didn't like it, and real estate, whether they became an agent or whatever, seemed like a better way to either take control of their own life so they didn't weren't their schedule wasn't beholden to some corporation or some company. But there's often a journey of like, oh, I went to school for this thing, I was doing this thing, and it actually sucked, and so I wanted to move on. So like, where did you start in school? Like, what was the interest then?
My interest in school was going to parties and girls. I was not a very good student. I probably wouldn't have graduated if I wasn't a reasonably decent athlete. And I actually joined the Army in the delayed entry program before I even got out of school because I lived alone. My parents moved back to Arizona, and I was in Washington State to graduate high school from. And I didn't want to go. I didn't want to leave my senior year. You kind of already established yourself. Who wants to go to a new school their senior year? So I
Yeah.
actually moved in with a bunch of buddies who lived on their own. Lots and lots of fun, but oh my goodness, I was not heading anywhere in life, and I saw it pretty quickly. So that's what got me into the Army. I didn't know where else to go. I mean, I was a D student. I had no ambition like that. I mean, I always worked. I've been pretty industrious. Like, I mean, I worked in restaurants. I was a dishwasher, busboy, worked my way up to be a waiter. One day I was going to be a bartender when I was old enough. Like, that would have been the path if I would have stayed on my high school path.
Yeah. So talk to me about the army. So around what time frame is this?
I joined the Army in 1995.
Okay. So not a lot is going on in terms of there's some special ops going on in like Eastern Europe and things of that nature and some stuff in Central South America, but nothing crazy. So is this just for you? Was that you're like this is the only way out or
It
was
was.
it
I
okay.
didn't. I didn't know what else to do. And if I would have stayed, half my friends got themselves in some pretty good trouble. Then a few went the right way, but not many. So
So how long were you in from like what like once you got in were you like okay I could do this for a little bit or walk me through I guess your this portion of your life the thought process from or if there is one because I think a lot of people also in a situation similar to yours, or just like day by day, the army, and then I'll see what happens. And then some people turn it into a career, others don't. Like, so I guess I'll go with like once your first kind of commitment is up, where are you at mentally?
Well, I'll kind of tie that all together real quick because I got in a when I went to join my father wasn't in the military, so I didn't really have any guidance. They weren't even around when I signed up. So I thought I was going to go take their test, and then they would be like, "Here's the 4 jobs you can do." I went and I took their test, and they're like, "Well, what do you want to do?" I was like, I don't even have a clue what I can do. And they said pretty much anything but be a pilot. So they handed me this big book, and then they let me watch it before there were CDs, those big the discs, the
Yeah,
that were like basically a big record size. I watched a few of those and everything looks boring. Then they showed me the infantry one and guys jumping out of planes and blowing stuff up. So I joined the infantry, a place to get skills to really be able to do one thing in life, be a security guard or a police officer. So, but I did enjoy it. I loved my time in the army, but I met my wife. Well, she wasn't my wife at the time, but I met her pretty quick when I was stationed in New York. She wasn't in the army. She just lived in New York. And I determined pretty quick I was going to get out just because, again, I saw that having a committed relationship, being especially in the infantry, wasn't really a sustainable thing for most people. Most of the guys I knew that were married were on their second, third marriage because you get deployed, you're gone for 6, 8, 12, 24 months. It's just not really a conducive family environment.
yeah,
So yeah, so I just did a 3-year tour. That's all I signed up for, and that's all I did. And I really enjoyed the army. And what I kind of tell people, I've got friends and family that are like, my son needs to join the army so it can make him a man or make her a woman. And what I tell everybody is that the army isn't going to make you anything but what you were going to be, just faster. It just pushes it out of you really quickly. If you're going to go down a bad path, it's just going to push you down that path really fast. If you're going to get squared away and you're going to do the right things and you're going to improve and move up the ranks, it's just going to push you in that way fast. But it won't make you anything that you're not. So that's kind of
mm,
my a big thing about if you're looking to join the military.
yeah. So, okay, so then you get out, and then what? So you've got the skills to be a security guard or a police officer,
And
and then what?
then I became a produce clerk. I got to use a knife though, so it kind of stayed close to weapons. No. I actually went to I went and I moved. My parents moved to Arizona when I was graduating high school. So when I got out, my wife was actually finishing college, and I didn't want to stay in New York. There was really nothing there for me. She was pretty far away, and it was a small college town, so I wasn't going to move there. So we planned on as soon as she graduated, she was going to move to Arizona with me. So I moved down there and started school. Went to college for a little bit. I did about a semester and just realized that college just wasn't for me. Biggest issue I had was I was studying business. I knew I wanted to open some kind of business just because that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to do my own business. And I was taking a bunch of business courses from people that have never owned a business and telling me how things were going to work and not work. And I'm like, I don't agree with you. You've never even owned a business. How can you tell me how to run a successful business? So I got out of college pretty quick and really was kind of just floated around for about a year after the army, just doing produce job. I got back into a serving job, and then where I really got down this path was I found a book. My mom got it for me or something, and it was called I don't remember who wrote it, but I remember the name of it was Buy It, Fix It, Flip It, Profit. And the guy really broke it down. He explained a lot of really cool things, introduced me to the concept of hard money, which is just high interest loans that are only based off the property and not really your credit or income. So it's very they tend to be a pretty risky loan for a lot of people. People tend to be afraid of them. But my first loan was 18% interest in 3 points, which means 3% of whatever my purchase price was. But that's really what got me into to flipping homes. I read that book, and then I had a house within about 3 months after reading that book.
Hmm. So talk, okay, so now good. We're getting into the meat of what it is that you've been doing for the last 20 something years. So for people that know what flipping a home means conceptually, um, break that down from the standpoint of like what does it actually entail? What are some of the pros and cons? Like you've done it, and so what are some things that you ran into that you're like, yeah, this was really great, and then I'm sure you had some deals that you were like, this is not so good. But like, what does it actually entail for somebody that just like has heard the term and they maybe like they're like, oh yeah, I buy it and then I sell it for more. But like, what does that actually mean and what does that actually entail? And also, if to go into some further detail, if somebody was maybe thinking about trying it, um, what should they know before getting into it?
Absolutely. So yeah, fix and flipping is pretty much exactly what the term is saying. If you're doing the fix and flip part, you're buying it, you're adding value to it in one way or the other, whether it's just doing cabinets and paint and flooring, or whether it's doing additions, adding new bathrooms or bedrooms, which really has kind of always been my bread and butter. After about my 10th home, I realized that square footage was my biggest advantage that I had over people. So, and then there's so many different ways to invest in real estate like that. Because sometimes people misconstrue like wholesaling, which means I just lock up a good deal and then I sell it to somebody else for a small markup, and then they do all the work, and all I had to do was find a good deal. Because finding the deals is really like kind of the magic to this. I mean, like I'm sure you've heard people say it's all in the buy, and it is all in the buy, because if you buy a home that's worth less than you can sell it for finished, you're never going to make money. So it's buy low, sell high.
So, in terms of like finding a good deal, what does that entail? So, obviously, for different markets, there's different things, specifics that you look for. But how would you know, like, what are some markers that you would know um, that are like, yeah, this is probably going to be a good option to at least dive into, if or at least look further into. We might not close on it, but this is a good starting point. Because I think people see things and like, oh, well, look at the comps in the neighborhood around, or these different things, and there because there's so many variables, I think it confuses people. They're like, well, this one has slightly more square footage, but like it's closer to the school or whatever, and all these things start to add in and factor into the price. So like what are some factors that you would look for in identifying like, yes, this is a good deal. I'm going to look further into this.
For me, I think it tends to be a little bit different than I think what I would suggest for somebody starting out would be. Because for me, I like to look for that value add home, kind of like I was saying. I like to be able to put extra bathrooms in them or extra bedrooms. So the first step I would tell somebody is find a great realtor, because if you have a really good investor friendly realtor who actually knows what they're doing, they're gonna save you so much time and so much money, because they're gonna give you the right data. Where if you just use Uncle Joe, who's got a full-time job and he got his real estate license 2 years ago because the market was hot and he was able to sell 10 homes and make more money than he's ever made that year, just writing contracts for people, that's not the guy you need. You need somebody who knows real estate investments and they know how to find that value. Because realtors are, if they're a good active full-time realtor, they're looking at that MLS every day. They're talking with other realtors that are getting projects in that, hey, I've got a listing I'm taking that's absolutely trashed. There were hoarders in the house. And you can get keyed onto those, not illegally before they get on the market, but like, hey, we've got a listing coming on the market. I want to show it to you tomorrow as soon as it's active. And, realtors will save your life if you get the right ones. But so with the criteria on those, the unicorn properties are the ones that just need very little repair and then you could sell them for a profit. Those are the only ones I've ever even almost gotten myself in trouble with, because you go in there with this minuscule budget, and then if you find out a major issue after you've opened up a wall or dug into that house a little bit more, it wasn't accounted for and the spread's normally not there. So for me, I always liked the heaviest distressed properties. I wanted things that stunk, that people didn't even want to walk into. I specialized in the Metro Phoenix area and renovating meth homes quite a bit, because you have to do a lot of special stuff to do those homes. It's not just to walk in there and clean it up. But I'll rewind that to just get yourself a realtor, find yourself a home that needs good repairs, but you don't want just paint and carpet, because those are the harder ones to find.
Mm. How did you end up doing meth homes? Was that something that was that an accident, or were you like, oh, I'm gonna go after something specifically?
I feel like there was a lot of meth cooking or manufacturing going on in the metropolitan Phoenix area at that time.
Yeah.
And a lot of times these homes were really hard. They were even hard to get into, because if they recognized that it was one of those homes, you had to sign waivers and you had to wear like chemical masks and stuff to even go in them. And I was just getting them so cheap. It was a home in an area that I could sell it for 200K and I could pick the home up for 50, $60,000. So I had a really big spread, and then I would just go in there and do whatever process that home took. So I just kind of stumbled into it. I was pretty heavy into my career when I started doing those. they're not something I would recommend just anyone go, hey, go find meth houses for your first house. You get a great deal. Like, you know, so
Yeah, probably not. Probably not ideal. Somebody's gonna come running because they left some evidence in the basement somewhere, and then that's
mhm.
not good either. Um, Talk about kind of getting so. You have people that help you with all the renovations and things of that nature. So you have to build a team that you trust to help you do that. Talk to that aspect of it because there's always a guy that knows a guy that's got his uncle that runs a tiling business or whatever, and then that doesn't work itself out, and you can land yourself into trouble by accident in a variety of ways. So talk to kind of how you went through maybe the vetting process um, of the like the team that you were able to put together for yourself and finding the right people, the right balance of people to work together. Maybe this company works better with that company, um, or certain companies work together differently. And you see this kind of with like with wedding venues, they've got all their preferred vendors and things like that. But in your case, like talk through that process of building a team that you trusted that had good value and kind of how you were able to sort that out.
Absolutely. I probably ran a little bit of a different path than a lot of people because when I started, I had way more time than money. So that is what I put into my homes. My very first home, we did all in-house. My mom helped me, my dad helped me, my wife helped me, and my best friend at the time helped me. So we all went in and fixed and flipped that home, and I cut little checks out to everybody at the end of that deal. It was a good deal. Um, and that's really, I really started that way. And I actually maintained that way all the way up to this day. I still own a construction company that does all of my renovations and my new build homes that I do up to today. But I did wave through a lot of vendors. I mean, I think the biggest thing is just really use licensed vendors. Everybody wants to think they're going to save money. Don't hire a handyman to do a contractor's job. It's just interview more than one person. And then really the biggest thing is get in good contracts with them that are very clear with what the expectations of them that they're going to do for you, the timeframes they're going to do it. And I don't pay anybody up front.
Mm. Was there a
It,
time
it,
that you got burned before that, like a story, like stories that you can share?
100%. The biggest outrageous one to me was a carpet guy. This wasn't my biggest punch I took, but it's the one that still impacts me to today. I met this carpet guy I met him at a restaurant bar somewhere. I was sitting there talking to somebody and he engaged in hey, I hear you're doing renovations. I'm a carpet guy. I had him out to a job. He came out to the job. He started putting the tack strip around the floor and said, hey, I need to go get some more supplies. And I said, okay, cool. I'm taking off for the day. Here's the check for this job. It was 300, $400. It wasn't a huge amount of money, but the guy left and never came back. I mean, I, I don't know, man. And I saw him multiple times. I had his number. I'd call him. Oh, yeah, I'll get back out there next week. And about a month in of me harassing him, he just basically told me to F off at that point. So, but yeah, just don't pay till the work's done and done to
Yeah.
satisfaction. So,
Yeah. Oh my gosh. So even with you owning your own kind of your own construction company, you still have a lot of delegation that you need to do. So whether or not you're contracting out or you actually own the company yourself, you still got people that you need to trust that are going to do the work properly in a timely manner for like let's say you buy a home and then you've got a buyer maybe that's interested and you've got timelines or deadlines and things of that nature. So there's still a delegation and a trust factor. And one of the things that I ask entrepreneurs who've scaled a lot, so a lot of the ones that come on the show are small, it's just them and maybe one or two other people, and so that trust factor is not like it's there inherently because they're all the founders. Well, generally speaking, anyways. But for people that scale, I always ask how the delegation started. How did you have difficulty kind of getting rid of some processes that you had started yourself? Um, and how do you find the right people for an environment that is faster paced, small teams, kind of there's not people wear multiple hats in instances such as this. How was that sort of process for you?
it's been good for me. I think one of the biggest lessons I learned really fast was to kind of hire slow and fire fast. So take a little time vetting people. People tend to tell you everything about themselves, but just not all at once. and sometimes it's not as clear, or you'll gloss over it because of your need. And I've definitively done that. I've glossed over red flags just because I was in a position where I just needed somebody to do that job. And it's never really worked out when I've had initial red flags and then I just ignored them. So take your time, vet people, ask the questions that you think are important to you. And then when you know it's not right, just move on from them. It will always hurt you more to hold on to somebody that you know isn't a good fit than it will to just let them go. And even if it's a family member or somebody you really care about, because I've had to fire my mother, my father, my wife, I mean, my sister. I was the company owner, and you got to fire people sometimes. And it's hard to get over, but ultimately, they will be happier if they're doing something that they're better at and they're more appreciated in than fumbling through to try to please me with things that they don't even have the capacity to do.
Mm. Firing your firing your parents. How'd that go? And your wife, actually, probably all we'll go with all three. That's
Let's be clear, the wife was the hard one.
tell my mom you're fired. Yeah, yeah, I could imagine it was. So how does that even happen? Is like how does that even occur?
Donald Trump style. You're fired. No, I'm just kidding. No. Uh, Honestly, it wasn't as hard as it sounded because they understood my thought processes and philosophies with that type of stuff. So when it was just like, hey, we're not really having a good fit here, it worked out. You're right. You're right. We're not. So it wasn't, I've definitely had the employees that I fired were like, I'm the greatest employee you've ever had. But my parents understood, and of course they want what's best for me. And it didn't actually hurt our family dynamics. So because we did have conversations about that up front, that how does this work if things don't work?
Mm,
So, which is kind of another thing that I really work on with everything. It's about that exit strategy before you actually get into it. If we can all talk about what the worst case scenarios are going to be, and if we can live with those, then we'll all be happy. It's kind of like a prenup. Like here's
yeah.
how we separate when we separate. And if you do that when everything's good, it makes life really easy when everything's bad, because you just can say, hey, we all agreed to that. And what do you say to that? Well, I changed my mind. Well, this is why we did it when we were all happy, not mad. So
Yeah, I think that's a very wise piece of advice for a lot of things is figure out the exit strategy up front and what the worst case scenarios are. Because like you said, it saves pain and headache on the back end oftentimes. Um, so speaking of pain and headaches, so based on the timeline, just doing quick math in my head. So you started doing kind of in the real estate world, um, and then 2008 occurs after you started. Is that correct?
oh yeah, I was
Okay.
deep, was rolling.
So talk through that, right? We've got the bubbles, oh 06, oh 07, kind of the adjustable rate mortgages, the subprime mortgages that are running around, and I wasn't old enough to really be paying attention at that time, but going back and reading back on it, it kind of I don't know if seems obvious is the right word, but it seems like the bubble was there. Um, talk about the lead up to oh 08, like oh 06, oh 07, and then adjusting fire because at some point you being in that business and that whole business kind of tanking, um, I'm sure you had thoughts of maybe should I keep doing this? Should I find something else? Like talk through that time period and kind of how you were able to stay afloat, mitigation strategies that you guys had, things like that.
Absolutely. So the basically I've got two flipping careers. I flipped homes until about 2007, and then I started flipping homes again in 2014. And I'll get us to that, but the middle of it is in 2006. I kind of I saw what was coming. I didn't know what it was and I didn't understand it, but I completely hard stopped the beginning of '07 investing at all. And what I did was I built a real estate team, and I started talking to the banks, and they're called REOs. Most people didn't know what that word was at the time, but it's real estate owned. It means that the bank took houses back and now they own real estate. So that's how it classifies on their books. And I started talking with them about getting their listings. And they've always been around, but like when the market's good, a lot of homes don't go back to the bank. So, you'll list one or two a month or every now and again for the bank. We got it up to where we were holding 100 plus properties that we were selling for the bank at a time. So I thrived when the market crashed. because I was so far ahead of what was happening there with the REOs. Like everybody was scrambling to how do I get REOs? So and they just didn't have a clue. And by the time everybody knew that that was where the market was going, most of the banks already had great people like me, and they just kind of stopped even looking. So it was really hard to get in with a bank. You had to go through a whole process, and it took time even when it wasn't busy. So we were very blessed when the market shifted. If I didn't have enough knowledge to know that I should have, as soon as the market really crashed, I should have been buying every cheap home I possibly could have. But still, we made it through that. But at the same time, I gave up a lot of what I loved doing it. So that's why we did have a break from 2009 till about 2014. I got burnt out. We did really well. I also thought I had way more money than I did. When you don't have your money in good investments, because I still to this day don't have any stock. I only have real estate as my portfolio. But I didn't have rental properties. I was a flipper. So I made lots and lots of cash. But cash doesn't last if it doesn't make you more cash. And it wasn't making me more cash because I just put it in the bank. And what are you making just in the bank on your money? Not a lot. And it's not like I had $20 million in there and it was making 1% interest and I could live off that. It wasn't even close to that. But
Talk talk through yeah, because I was gonna ask that if you're flipping, you get the checks from when you sell, obviously. But if you've got a house that doesn't sell and you're paying the mortgage on it, like how are you basically just living basically sale to sale essentially and hoping that it works itself out? Because I can imagine like once you scale up to like you mentioned 100 properties and you're selling stuff like I'd imagine you got enough margin. So like let's say you mentioned before that a 200K like meth property or whatever you were able to buy for 50, 60, and let's say renovations cost, I don't know, 75. And so you've got then 75K minus taxes and whatever else and commissions and this and that on the sale. So like 50K left over. And so that can cover a mortgage for a house like that for, I don't know, a year or whatever. But maybe less. So is that kind of the thought pro like how are you keeping the books from that perspective? And you mentioned the burnout. Did you start to feel the pressure to start to sell when slash if things weren't selling at that time? Because you didn't really have a income other than the sales.
well, the thing was, I scaled my fix and flips really fast. I got up to where I was running 10 projects at a time. So
Mm, okay.
I was on average closing 4 or 5 deals a month that I was getting profit on. And where I was at was 50K was my bottom line for myself that I wanted to take home after all fees and everything. So, so we did good. You'd be closing closing anywhere between 3 and 4 houses a month, sometimes more, sometimes less, but hardly less. But the other thing was the majority of my homes, like I was saying, I bought with realtors. My wife became a realtor. My father, my mother, my sister all became realtors. So we would make a commission on the front end when we would buy a house, and then all the commissions got to stay in house on the back end when we'd sell them. And then when we shifted to the REOs, we made lots of money because uh, one, homes were still selling really well in that market. The prices were just dropping so rapidly. I mean, we went down to where we were selling 70, 80, $90,000 homes that defaulted at 250, 260. So our economy kept, we kind of always had cash coming in. It's just, I'm not here to tell anybody what to do with their money because I absolutely suck at it. I'm amazing at making money, but keeping it, not my gift, not my skill. And that's why my wife just takes all of our money and puts it in the right places. So, um,
Yeah, yeah, fair enough. Yeah, I wish there was 100K houses out there today. That'd be nice. Um, so
and if
speaking
you want to
of
go to Detroit, get you $4,000 houses in a couple neighborhoods.
yeah. So speaking of today, not to jump completely ahead, but I wanted to ask this before I forgot. What is your take on real estate and asset prices today? Like things seem to be so inflated that it's like I don't see how like people that are around my age or younger are how like I none of my friends are like, yes, I'm going to buy a house soon. And the ones that have moved like way outside of the cities like and I don't see how that's sustainable for anyone that wants to sell anything because who's going to buy it except for these kind of either like hedge fund type things that are buying up properties and renting them out. But Like I don't see how this is sustainable at all. And I don't know if there's going to be if it's another bubble '08 situation or like what the scenario is going to be, but like what are you seeing? Like what is your analysis of the situation?
Well, it's a tough one because I don't see a bubble because to me the catalysts for the bubble aren't there. The majority of homes that sold, there's a large percentage of homes that have sold that are all cash sales. The other thing is those interest only loans and the adjustable rate mortgages, they're such a limited product at this point. It's not what they're pushing everybody into like they did. Because like that whole market, anytime somebody says, "Oh, buy this and we'll just refinance you out of it later when your mortgage payment doubles." I mean, that just in a whole, that's scarier than the hard money loans that I get because what happens when you can't refinance it? So the way that that bubble was created was how could that one not have busted? But
Yeah.
like where we're at now, I don't feel like we have false inflation on the homes like we did at that time. Where like, I mean, literally you could buy a house and you could sell it that same month in the '07 market, even '06, and make money off of it. That's not real. Like you also can't today go in and be a Walmart greeter and just have that level of salary, but you have a high credit score and say, I make 500K a year. I want to buy $1 million home. Where like, I mean, there were literally people that were doing that. They had good enough credit that they could go get a home on an adjustable rate mortgage and afford it for the first 2 years. And then as soon as it adjusted, that they were defaulting. But I also see the big pivot to what you're saying. We have a whole generation of people that really homeownership's not even on their mind. That's why I think like the group home and the co-living and those types of things are going to be such a large model. Plus, recently, Lennar Homes just, I think they're merging with someone else, and Warren Buffett's starting to really buy them up because they have a whole new product line, and it's build to rent homes that they're not even selling to consumers. They're just straight selling to hedge funds and things like that, like whole communities. So it's there's a shift happening in it. There's a shift in home ownership. My hopes are that it starts to shift back because I still personally believe homeownership is your best form of wealth creation. It's still going to be one of the safest because I mean if people don't like home, I mean you kind of have to live in a home. I mean you cannot like Elon Musk and crash his company, but what are you going to do I mean other than give us a funky false inflated market again to crash our housing market? It's a lot harder to crash it without doing crazy false things like those adjustable rate mortgages. Um,
Yeah.
I hope I
I
answered.
Yeah, you did. And I get the vibe also from a sustainability just like a societal sustainability perspective that if people are not owning things and they don't have ownership in where they live, then it like it doesn't bode well for I remember when I was little and I knew all the neighbors and I was at the my like friends' houses all the time and I could just go over there and we had a neighborhood directory where like everyone's phone number was on there and the kids would all play and like you knew who lived in every house and like since I've become an adult it's like I don't know hardly any of them past like you say hi when you park the car and they're taking the trash out or whatever, and that's it. Like, there's nobody that I'm like, hey, we're leaving for the weekend. Can you watch the dog? And it's like, and that sort of community, like, doesn't, like, if nobody's owning and everything feels temporary, it doesn't bode well for just like community things and tight knit and people taking care of each other. And it just doesn't feel I don't know. It just doesn't feel great from that perspective, like looking forward, because like you said, home ownership is like one of the best or probably the best path to wealth creation and wealth building. Um, and if it's inaccessible to a giant portion of the population, like that doesn't feel it's like it does like if I'm building a culture from scratch in a video game, like that's not the way I would do it.
I gotcha. Well, I think some things are going to shift too, though. I'm already seeing a lot of builders in a lot of places. We're kind of shifting away from the McMansions because I mean, when we had low home prices and low interest rates, the McMansions seemed great, but we're kind of getting down to more like I know even myself personally, I'm starting to build smaller homes. I'm starting to build 1,000 square foot homes that are 3 bedroom, 2 baths, and things like that because the affordability factor keeps them in there. And it's just it's just those ebbs and flows of what people are into at the time. Because I mean, I'm sure you've seen those neighborhoods where they have all the 3,000 square foot homes, but they still were in a they were in a reasonable price point. They were mansion sizes, but they weren't really mansions. They were really a lot of them were kind of shoddy construction and almost disposable homes in some ways because they just slapped them up so quickly without really great materials. But they were huge homes. You could go buy a 2,500, 3,000 square foot home for 450, 480. So in our area, I mean, of course, real estate's very regional, but
Yeah.
I'm seeing some shifts in those things too, where we can bring that home affordability down by doing smaller homes. Plus, I mean, interest rates, it's hard because interest rates always flux. I mean, I'm sure you probably don't really remember because I don't really remember this as much as I know it. But like in the 80s when we had 18, 19% interest rates and people couldn't, and people still bought homes. So we got used to these 3% interest rates and people think like that was the norm, but 3 and 4% interest rates have never been the norm. I mean, 5, 6, 7% is kind of it's been in that range for a long time. I mean, my first home I bought was at 9%, and I thought I was getting a great rate. So,
Yeah, I tell people that often who like friends who are saying, "Wow, interest rates are high." I'm like, "Well, historically actually they're very low." And we've like you said, we've become used to them being in the single digits, but also like if you're buying a home for 150K on an 18% interest rate versus like I think I heard a stat the other day is like the median is like 600K now. It's like I'd depending on where you look, it's like you said, regional, but like past half a million in a lot of the kind of metropolitan areas, New York, DC, LA, Boston, wherever. Like I'd rather have the 200K on the 18% interest rate than the 600K on 6% because it's like, well, one, if I can make the if I can make the cash to pay down the principal quicker, then the 200K is easier to get behind. But it's and that's kind of what I was going at with the bubble question earlier. It won't be exactly the same as '08 due to all the factors that you mentioned. But at the same time, it does feel like with kind of the banking system always kind of meddling around with different things. It doesn't feel like it feels like a price correction is kind of incoming, but I don't really know what that means. And you've got different assets, right? So even real estate is one aspect of that, but then you've got stock markets and other and crypto and gold and all these other things that are just shooting up to the moon, generally speaking, recently. And it's like, well, if you don't invest now, are you going to miss the boat forever for that sort of thing? And then it just feels very volatile. I don't really know. I can't really like put my finger on it, but it feels very volatile, and I don't really like it to be honest.
I understand that feeling, but I guess to me, what I tell anybody I talk to about investing is now is always the best time to invest.
Yeah.
If you're trying to wait for that market to correct, where are you going to get it? It's I know people that bought in the peak of the '07, '08 market, but what they did is they lived in their home for 10 years. And you know what? When they sold their home, they made a lot of money. We had some friends who recently in the last 5 years sold their home and they bought it in the peak of the market. It took them 8 years to get back to level. And I understand the psychology of that. It's kind of hard to be like, man, I've got this home that I'm $500,000 into and it's only worth 250. I should just dump it and go get another one. But you can't because how do you dump that home? You're going to default on it. It's the only way to dump it. And now you're going to trash your credit and you're not getting another home.
Yeah.
That's the beauty of homes, though, is that you can live there until you can't. So it's not like I'm watching my XRP just dive down. Like, I mean, I have no control over that. All I can do is sell it, hold it, or buy more. Like, so,
Yeah,
um,
yeah, 100%. That is the other thing with homes. Like that's a very good point. Is that you could just stay there, and then eventually, probably it'll go back up, and you'll be fine.
or you could
Um,
rent it if you need to move somewhere else. I mean, so
there's
there's options
options.
with it. The other thing about the bubble is that we're still selling homes. I mean,
Hmm.
yeah, there's places in the U.S. that are hit more than others, but like our home inventory in my area, we have a 3 month supply of homes, which is an absolutely natural, healthy supply of homes. You don't want to have 12, 18 months worth of homes. And when there's less than a month's worth of homes, we're in that frenzied market. I hate even though I made more money in frenzied markets, I hate it. I hate the way it makes people act, the way it makes people buy, the way it makes people sell. People get so greedy, and then the other people that are buying get so desperate. And it's just bad business to me like that. I don't like buying desperate, and I don't like selling as a greedy person. So uh,
Mm.
it's it's a challenge, but and hey, none of us really know because if you do really know, let me know and I'll start making different moves. But like, I don't see the factors there for a bubble because even the
Okay.
people that can't buy still have to live somewhere, and we still do have a housing shortage. So, in a lot of areas. So,
Yeah, fair enough. Okay, so let's get back to 14 when you started flipping again.
yep,
So you got burned out and you're like, okay, I'm not gonna do it for a little while. And then what was the catalyst to get you back into it?
I ran out of money.
Oh, well, that'll do it.
Straight up, we took a few years off and really I did almost nothing. I mean, I had a lot of fun. Me and my wife really enjoyed ourselves. We traveled quite a bit. Um, we were in upstate New York, staying with Nikki's mother. We were up there visiting, and it's when I looked at my bank account and realized I didn't even know how I was going to get us home. But so I started wholesaling in we had moved back to Washington State at that point, so that was kind of our home hub, and I started looking for properties to wholesale, and I found some good ones. I got them under contract from Washington, and then I was running Craigslist ads, and I found an investor that wanted to do some properties, and he actually wanted to partner with me on them because we talked about my experience a little bit, and that's what brought me back into real estate investing was one first and foremost running out of money. If I was smarter with my money, I'd probably still be retired. And then that's what brought us back up to Washington and really got me back into. I started fix and flipping hard again, and then
Okay.
I fixed and flipped till about 2017, and then I started the Burr method, and I started buying them and keeping them as rentals.
Okay. What was the thought process behind that? Because you've been very successful with the flipping, and are you like this is just seems to be working better, or was there one instance that made you kind of shift, or was it a gradual shift?
Toward going back towards the rentals,
Yep.
it was the fact that as soon as I stopped flipping, I stopped making money. Where with the rentals, I get that long-term appreciation and I get a little bit of monthly cash flow. And with regular real estate rentals, cash flow is not huge. I mean, you get into it because cash flow, but that's not really what keeps you there. Because I mean, average is probably 200 to 500 bucks a month that you're making off of a regular rental. If you just buy a home 20% down, turnkey, you're not killing it on cash flow. You're not going to quit your job buying one rental. And the reality is if you got to do one roof or you get one bad tenant that you have to evict and do some repairs on, your whole year's worth of profit's gone, but you still have that appreciating asset in your portfolio. So that's what made me go to it was I learned a pretty big lesson thinking I had a lot of cash, and just cash doesn't last long when you don't change your lifestyle and you don't have it working for you. Because my cash did not work for me. It did nothing for me but sit in a bank and deplete month after month.
Yeah. I think what you mentioned about the cash flow piece is that can be difficult for people to take a very long-term view on it. Like, oh, I have to do this one thing and now I haven't made any money. And then I think I was talking with somebody else who's kind of in this industry and they're like, yeah, 7 years is really when I started to see like
Mhm.
kind of the true benefits of it. And when you're living day to day, 7 years is a long time. So
It is.
but it seems like loads of people have done it. It seems to be very tried and true, and it's just do you have kind of the metal to stick it out for that long? Um, if you had done, what would you have done differently in terms of you mentioned if you managed the cash better, you'd still be retired. If you could go back and do it all over, from
I
just from that perspective, I don't mean like the stuff that you're doing now. Of course, like we talked on the phone and you love what you're doing, and so I don't mean to say like you would never do that ever again. But if like in that scenario, what would you have done differently?
I would have held every home I could have held. I I would have flipped enough to be able to get myself into that pool, and then I would have started that buy them, fix them up, and then re-rent them. because the coolest thing is when you get in when you really start getting into this and you start it's where you'll hear some people say like we're like, I don't pay any taxes and I make $200,000 a year. Okay, well, how do you do that? Well, because I buy a distressed property, I fix it up, I refinance it and pull cash out of it, and then I rent it. Because anything you pull out on the refi is cash, but it's tax free because it's not income, it's a loan. So you know when you, and especially like when you're buying heavily distressed homes or you're building homes, you can actually pull a good chunk of home out. I had years there where I was pulling out, a couple $100,000 a year, and I was getting loans on it, of course, but that was money I got to use and spend, and I wasn't having to pay it back because the tenants were paying all that money back for me. Now, granted, yes, I still owed that money, but it went on to the principal balance of that home. But like I didn't take in 100,000 and have to give 40 of it back in taxes. I got to take that 100,000 in and it went to go into my bank account and it was mine. So
Mm. How did you manage that from somebody that like the way that you talk about it, you have got a lot of experience doing it, makes total sense to you. You know how to manage it and do that. But for somebody who maybe is looking to get into that sort of thing and here's, oh, well, I've taken 100 grand of cash out of the equity of this home and it's a loan, but I have it. And who's going to come bang on my door when I don't make this payment? Like, how does that work?
in with the cash, like you mean, or
Yeah. So like the scenario that you just mentioned, you're like, you take out a loan and but you don't have to pay taxes on it and it's yours and you can spend it and the tenants pay it back. Like, how
yeah.
does that, like, who do you actually owe the money to? And then how does that like payment system work? So like people would know like, oh, if I'm in debt from a credit card, I pay it back to the credit card company. But in this scenario, how does that work?
It's just part of the mortgage in the scenario that I'm talking about. Because I would just put that home into a long-term 30-year loan, but then I would pull equity out of it. So let's just say, just easy math, I'm I've got 100,000 that I own the house, and there's 100,000 I can pull out of it, and now I owe 200,000 to that lender. I took 100 of it in cash, and then the other 100 was sitting in the house. Well, the house is the collateral for all of it. So that whole 200,000 is against that house. So if I default, I'm defaulting on that mortgage. And the mortgage lender doesn't really, I mean, look, I haven't defaulted, so I can't tell you this as a fact, but I don't believe that they can come and say, hey, we want our $100,000 back. They get their $100,000 back from you because they take the house.
Okay, gotcha. That
So
makes sense. Okay, so you've shifted into the rental kind of thing, and you mentioned on the phone, so that's going swimmingly from 2017 to 2019 or so. And you mentioned on the phone when we talked that COVID was not very helpful to this. So talk through that, and then kind of the shift from there, and then we'll get into the group homes, your company now, and the rest of it.
I really loved it. I was crushing it from 14 up until about the 20 range, when COVID really got deep is when things changed for me. But I built about 20 rentals in my portfolio because, again, I started the way I should have started. I did a bunch of flips. I got myself enough money to where once I started taking these on as rentals, it was really easy for me because then I had some good reserves. But I built it up. I had about 20 rentals that were active and going, and they were all going really good until all of the COVID restrictions hit. And I mean, it was almost like somebody sent a script out to people because overnight people stopped paying their mortgages. And I'm always a high touch person with stuff. So like I would call all my tenants and hit them up like, hey, what's going on? Do you need some help? I understand COVID's. Are you laid off from your job? And the answer from a lot of them was just like, no, no, everything's going good. We just don't have to pay and we're not going to. And they weren't wrong. They just stopped paying and there was literally nothing I could do. Um, so, I mean, I really, I talked with attorneys because, I had one that I used because I've had to evict people before, and Washington State especially. I recommend everywhere you use an attorney to evict people because there's a lot of rules that you got to follow. But they just told me there's nothing we can do. There's zero evictions going on. We can't evict anybody. And then we found a little loophole in it where either I could move into the home or I could sell the home. So I started selling my homes, which was a horrible thing for me because, one, these were my long-term assets. This was my wealth. This was my round where I was gonna do it right. And I was just literally watching it slip through my fingers because, I mean, I still had to make all those mortgage payments. Some of them I had utilities that I paid on. And it doesn't matter if the tenants aren't paying you, you must keep their utilities on. People would still call me for clogged toilets and repairs, and I still had to go do repairs in a home where somebody wasn't paying me. So I was devastated. I thought I was going to lose it all. I started selling. I sold 4 or 5 of my homes, and I mean I was basically giving them away at the time. People were still buying during COVID, but I had tenants that wouldn't leave. And then most of the time, when tenants don't want to leave, they stop maintaining the property. So I had distressed homes that had people in them. So the new buyer didn't know specifically if those people were going to be gone when they closed on it or not. So it just was a perfect storm to not make money at that point for me. Uh,
Yeah.
so as I was doing this, of course, I'm searching online. I'm trying to figure a way out. And I stumbled across an ad for a guy giving a little coaching program on how to open group homes. Didn't really know what it meant. It's just he was talking about the pains that I was having. He was talking about how to not have bad tenants in your houses, how to 10x your cash flow on these houses. So at first I kind of thought, okay, I got the sham wow guy on here. He's going to sell me some amazing product, but and it's just not going to be that great of a product. But I got into it. I paid whatever it was for the coaching program, and it was solid. It was solid information. He'd been doing it for 15, 20 years before this, running group homes. And kind of show, because the group homes, I'll just give a quick breakdown on that. Group home is, I mean, just basically a home where a bunch of people that aren't related live together. There can be elderly care, there can be, elderly daycares where people just come for the day. You can do youth phasing out of like the foster system. Like what I run now, you can run sober and recovery homes. So like there's co-living now is becoming a very big thing, which is just basically you're renting a room out to random people and they share common areas because it's very affordable. But it started making sense and then as I did my research, it pushed me kind of into my passion, which is helping people get off of drugs. I've never had a drug problem, but I've been surrounded by it my whole life. My parents, my friends, just like it's just rippled throughout my whole life, and it still does because drugs are still a big problem. But that's what really changed everything for me. I was able to get a few people out of some of the homes that left, and I filled them up with sober living, and they did well enough to allow me to maintain through getting the other people out of my homes and work through that wave. And then within about a year and a half, under 2 years, I had 14 of these up and running as sober living homes, and that's kind of where I'm at today now is crushing the sober living. So.
Yeah. What's interesting to me is I was thinking about that about this before we started is you went from having I'll say air quotes regular people who were fine pre-COVID. We'll leaving aside the they wouldn't leave because COVID laws went bananas, this sort of thing. Leaving aside that, you went from that to well, now I'm going to need to drug test people and have security guards and have much more time for repairs and other things if things don't go right, and also put way more people who have the potential to be destructive in the home. So, like, you went from like, yeah, this is not great to let me go to like the hardest thing that I could possibly go to. I was like, I wonder what Jim is going to say when I ask him that. Uh, well, so you're like, so now you have, but now you've got all these other things that you've got to deal with outside of the legal and the construction and the real estate stuff. Now you've got the drug testing and the security guards and the rest of it. How was that transition for you to finding the right balance, the right scenarios? I don't remember exactly what we talked about on the phone about random drug testing and things of that nature, but you had to implement all these new things. So how was that? And learning the right ways to do it, wrong ways to do it, lessons learned, kind of did you have people that helped you do it? Like, talk through that part.
The coaching program I got was just a little online course, so there was no real support with it per se. It was just, hey, here's the basic tactics to go. I mean, it could have been a book. It just was an online course. So we learned a lot by trial and error. Um, I got pretty blessed in a few regards. I met a guy locally who ran a sober living home. He actually was a drug addict, got himself into a home and made his own personal home that he lived in into a sober living home for his first year or two. And then he ended up buying like one or two more. He had three total. And he really helped me with so much stuff. I mean, one of the things that happened was one night we had a guy smoking fentanyl in a bathroom. And Washington State, where I live, it doesn't snow a lot here, but it was one of those rare occasions where it was snowing that night. It was about 12:30 in the morning. We got a phone call from the tenant saying someone's smoking meth in the bathroom. And me and the girl that I work with who runs all my homes for me had to try to figure that out. And we didn't know how do we kick this guy out in the middle of the night. And we ended up calling our guy Barney, and he told us to put him in a cab to the hospital because the hospital has to accept him, and he can sit in their lobby where it's warm until the morning, and he can figure something else out. So we put him in a cab to the hospital. But because you do have the ability to remove people from these homes, which is pretty powerful. Because they don't work if you can't remove people. Like it's not a sober living home if somebody can do drugs in it and I can't evict them.
Yeah.
Um, so we learned a lot by trial and error, and I'm ever since I started in real estate, I've really been about coaching and training and putting yourself around people that have been doing what you want to do, so that way you can stand on the shoulders of giants and learn from all their lessons. So that's really where we did it. But I'm in a smaller town. My town itself only has about 11,000 people. So it's not like I had this vast pool of there's 100 sober living homes in my area. There were four. And the one guy that I was working with had three of them. And actually now he doesn't have any of them because he sold all of his houses and he works for me. So um but that's that's a big part of it. And I have the same thought process, and this is the same thought process that I run into with neighbors because, again, I still go knock on every neighbor's door when I'm opening up a new sober living home in the area, and they all have the exact same fear. You're opening a flop house, you're going to bring drugs to our area. And when you realize that the people that I'm helping are coming from their rock bottom, and I only take people that are in recovery. I don't take active drug users that are trying to detox. They need to go to a professional place to detox and get themselves off drugs. I only take people that are sober and have been and have a track record of being sober. Like 30 days is our very bare minimum, and that normally will get them through at least a program. And then they do have to work those programs in our houses. We have a lot of rules. So we don't, at the core, all I provide is a safe living environment, but we also have a lot of rules and we do random drug tests. And they're drug tested sometimes by their other places, by their whoever their treatment is. Um, so you actually get people whose lives you're really changing and saving for the most part. The majority of these people are so grateful to have a safe, sober place to be. They treat you like gold, especially if you treat them right. And you get your bad seeds. We kick people out. I mean, literally this month we had to put four people out of a house because once drugs get into a house, they're in the house. So, and it was four people in the same house, and they all were positive for drugs. So we had to remove four people in the same day. It happens, but that's rare for us now because most people really want to recover.
Mm, that's good. Do you have relationships with like the rehab facilities in the area and things of that nature?
Absolutely. They're your biggest advocate, and they're the biggest place where you're going to actually get people into these types of homes. So
Was that difficult before you had built up kind of a like now at this point you've got 14 of them, you've got a reputation that is like, yeah, we're good at this and we don't treat them unfairly, et cetera, et cetera. But the first couple, I can imagine a rehab facility might be like, who are you? And there are people to come live where exactly? Like, was that a
yes,
difficult part for you?
it was at first. You know, and I deal with it a lot with people too that are calling for the first time to a rehab facility because it's exactly that. It's an awkward call the first couple of times because you don't really know the verbiage to say to them. I'm looking to put people on drugs in my houses. I mean, like, what's this guy want? Like, so, and these type of homes have gotten a bad name in the past because one, they can become a flop house really quick. There is really good cash flow on these homes. And if you're a bad landlord and you're a slumlord landlord and you're willing to just not care because the checks keep coming and you don't care if the people are doing bad things in your home, you'll give that bad reputation. I saw a video online, one of these houses, they were talking about them, and somebody stabbed somebody else over a piece of chicken in the house because you ate my chicken, and somebody got stabbed. But that was a house that no one's running properly. And yes, they're very awkward conversations until you have your scripting down and you know what to say. Um,
Yeah. Well, so was it is are there specific so what would the specific terms be that you would use to kind of to get on the right side of these people kind of who are in the recovery industry and that sort of thing. Did you go on, I don't know, Chat GPT and then it's like, okay, this is what I should say? Or
Um,
like how long did it take you to get into that? And I guess because all it takes is one, like you've got one or two houses and then you got to kick a couple people out and then it's like, oh, okay, the percentage is not that great. It's not that successful. I don't know. Or did it go more quickly? Was it more successful more quickly because I remember like when we talked for our intro call, you were on the way to one of these places. Like you're always on the way to like check on these things and make sure that people are okay and make sure the property's good and all that stuff. So was it kind of a quicker transition to getting that reputation out there, or did it take some time?
it was lightning fast for me. I'm in a starved area which honestly most areas are. Like right now, we're kind of on the front end of all of this. You're kind of on the front end of co-living. You're kind of on the front end of recovery housing, because it's not mainstream. I mean, most people you tell them it's a sober living home, and so what? You take drug addicts. I mean, they don't really know exactly what that means. I was blessed, one being a smaller place, and then two having nice homes. I way overdid my first home because my first home was actually an Airbnb. I mean, it's just a blip of a story, but it was an Airbnb, and I decorated as an Airbnb, so it was super sexy, super higher end stuff. And I absolutely hated running Airbnbs. Nothing I ever want to touch again in my life. And bad experience. If that was my first real estate experience, I wouldn't touch real estate with a 10-foot pole. But but it was when the counselors came and did a walkthrough on my house, they were just enamored. Oh my God, this place is beautiful. Can I get a room? But none of them look like that today. Now it's more about function because when people leave, they will take things. They'll take the nightstand. I mean, I can't tell you how many mattresses just disappear when guys leave our houses. But
It's like, that's not an easy thing to steal.
it's not. But I have to buy them all the time. So, but it wasn't hard for me. But like I said, I'm experienced in a lot of these things. So, and to your Chat GPT question, I use Chat GPT for everything. So, um, uh, but that could be a whole nother day conversation just about how to use Chat GPT properly. But I feel like I got off on your question. I'm sorry.
No, no, no. You're all good. You're all good. So what would you want people listening to take away and slash or where should they go if they want to learn more or I guess is there a way to support you on the website or however what are the takeaways for people listening and where should they go to find out more?
Absolutely. Well, if you know, two different people I really kind of resonate with is people that really want to get into this niche because they want to help. Because there's a lot of people that are, especially coming out of recovery, that want to be able to have good recovery homes because they had a hard time finding one or they found a great one and it changed their life. And then there's landlords that are not loving what they've got going on that want to up their cash flow and kind of lower, I don't want to say their liability, but their stress level if they have bad tenants. Um, is 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 this model, whether it's the sober living, whether it's the elderly care, the co-living, any of the group home models are just such an amazing model. They literally generate anywhere between 8 and 10x of the cash flow. And then they can become a lot less because it sounds like there's a lot more on my plate with it. There's just more moving parts, and that's why I've built a team. And I've also been able to give some full-time jobs to people in my community for working at these places. But there are a lot, there's a lot less big problems. Like I said, evictions are almost a non-thing because I just tell people you have to pack your stuff up and leave. And if they don't, the police will come remove them. So it's not like, hey, you got to take this to court. This is a civil matter. Like they get them out of there quick. So, those are the things if you're really looking to get into this to help, or you really want to change the business dynamics that you have in your rentals and actually start cash flowing off your rentals while you're building that long-term equity. What I've got is right now on Amazon, I did just finish my book. It's the blueprint on how to start group homes and scale them. And it's Group Home Accelerator by me, Jim Boad. And then on my Group Home Accelerator website too, I actually offer coaching because I know how big of a deal it would have been for me on quite a few things if I didn't have the help that I had that was there. And now I've been through the majority of those problems. So, I mean, I can really help people start their homes and scale their homes quickly with very minimal problems.
Very nice. So the book is on Amazon and everywhere you can get books, or just Amazon?
Should be everywhere you can get books right now. Yeah.
Okay, very nice. And then the website for the coaching, where can the people go?
Group Home Accelerator.
Okay, very nice. For those listening, those links will be in the description as always. Go check it out. If you're interested, go get the book. Um, Jim, any last nickels before we get you out of here?
Um, no, not specifically, other than just take some imperfect action. Everybody wants to do something great, and it truly does start with that first step. Don't be afraid and just wait till everything is perfect for you. Now's always the best time to take some sort of action. So,
Yeah, absolutely. That's great advice. Thank you guys for listening. Like I said, go check out the links in the description, and we will see you guys next time. Peace. Thanks for tuning in to the World XP podcast. If you want to watch another episode like this one, click there. If you want to subscribe, click there.